numerous important discoveries have been achieved in the fields of anthropology, biology, genetics, technology, archaeology, and medicine. The world's oldest wet mummy, naturally preserved in ice with unusual clothing and equipment, is one of the most amazing discoveries in history. Ötzi the Iceman is a man full of superlatives. Who was Ötzi based on genetics?
We figured, he was probably Italian. Wrong. Didn't cluster with the Italians. Maybe he's Austrian. Wrong. He didn't cluster with the Austrians. Eastern European? Wrong. North African? Wrong, wrong, wrong. So, where's this guy from? And it turned out, much to our surprise, that his closest living relatives were on the island of Sardinia. Totally unexpected.
Does this mean that...
Which unknown facts of prehistoric human life did Ötzi take to his grave? And after all these years, how did scientists find out the specifics of Ötzi's life and death? Today, we reveal the most recent information regarding Ötzi, the most peculiar mummy found in the Alps. Before diving into this icy mystery, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel so you never miss out on our new videos.
He's the oldest human specimen we have that is so complete.
He's so well preserved.
Throughout history, the Earth has produced wonders. Over the ages, scientists continue to make amazing discoveries that astound people everywhere. Experts have uncovered startling findings about the remains of a man who was buried in ice for more than 5,000 years.
However, the endeavor proved much more difficult than expected. The relentless elements conspired against them. Ötzi remained completely covered in ice, especially below his torso. The rescuers, armed with a pneumatic drill and ice axes, had to combat the elements.
The most studied corpse in the world is perhaps Ötzi the Iceman, whose frozen remains were discovered by hikers in 1991 in a ravine high in the Tyrolean Alps. The finding of Ötzi, often referred to as Ötzi the Iceman, is an amazing discovery that provides additional insight into the dynamic nature of the Earth and its wonders. This finding stunned the world, and it altered our understanding of prehistoric Europe. Glacial ice remarkably preserved this natural mummy, which belongs to a man who lived an incredible 5,300 years ago, between 3350 and 3150 BC. His remains were found in the Ötzi Alps, separating Austria and Italy. This finding has the potential to unleash incredible opportunities that were previously unknown to humankind. Ötzi's remains are the oldest natural human mummy in Europe. Only Europe can take pride in Ötzi's record because no other region of the world has revealed a discovery of this magnitude. Other continents are still waiting for their own miraculous breakthrough. Still, there's a good chance that similar mummies can be found in America, Asia, or Africa. Don't forget the unexpected finding of 3 frozen corpses of Austro-Hungarian soldiers in the Trentino Alps in 2004 presented a unique chance for researchers to learn more about Ötzi's preservation. Similar preservation by the mountain climate befell these troops, who lost their lives in the 1918 Battle of San Mateo. By tracking down and examining the factors that affected one of the remains' preservation after it was brought to a museum, researchers hope to uncover more details about Ötzi's background. These extra bodies function as links between Ötzi and a later historical period, offering vital parallels that contributed to solving the enigma of the Iceman. Perhaps with a little bit of luck mixed in with intense study and cutting-edge research, anything could materialize. Speaking of Ötzi, his existence opens a rare window into the lives of Chalcolithic Europeans, also referred to as the Copper Age. Through Ötzi's body and possessions, scientists have discovered important details about his health, diet, clothes, tools, and cause of death. Ötzi is a living, breathing link to a time gone by, a real individual stepping out of the mists of time to share his story. Ötzi's demise appears to have been extremely brutal and unsettling. A troubling clue that his left shoulder had an arrowhead implanted in it, a sticky, pointy end, was discovered during a body examination. This information, along with further injuries found on his body, paints an unclear picture.
Ötzi died not voluntarily, not accidentally, he was murdered. and it was a homicide.
Scientists conclude that Ötzi was probably stabbed to death by another person. Is there any chance that this happened following a fight or something similar? These theories, though, are subject to examination. Researchers are still working to unravel the fascinating mystery surrounding his existence and the details surrounding his demise. Everything about him, his stomach, his tools, his clothes, contributes to this story. Let's start by discussing how this mummy was found before delving into the mysteries these meticulous inspections have revealed. Our perception of history was completely altered by an unforeseen meeting of Ötzi in the Ötztal Alps. Two German travelers named Helmut and Erika Simon were hiking across rugged terrain close to the Austrian-Italian border on September 19, 1991. During their hike, they ascended 3,210 meters, that's more than 10,500 feet, on the eastern slope of the Finalspitze, a peak enigmatic and buried in folklore. The two German travelers crossing the Tissenjoch mountain pass observed a human figure partially exposed when the glacier ice melted. The Simons cautiously approached, thinking they had stumbled upon a recent mountaineering accident. They had no idea that what they were going to find would fundamentally alter the course of European history.
This is what he looked like when they found him. The Simons didn't know, they recognized that it was a body. They thought it might have been a recently deceased person. They weren't sure.
Soon, word of the discovery circulated through the close-knit community that surrounds the Ötztal Alps. The next day, the caretaker of the nearby Similanhütte, a mountain hut that offers refuge to hikers, and a mountain guide who oversees search and rescue operations in the Alpine region, arrived. They set out to recover the body, but the task proved to be far more challenging than anticipated. The unrelenting forces worked together to undermine them. Ötzi was still entirely encased in ice, particularly below his torso. Armed with ice axes and a pneumatic drill, the rescuers had to fight against the extreme cold and the sheer stability of the glacial ice. Sadly, bad weather forced them to head back, leaving Ötzi behind for an additional night. They were unable to carry out their planned act, but the finding generated a lot of media attention. As word spread, renowned climbers, including climbing legends Hans Kammerland and Reinhold Messner, learned of the story. In a short while, 8 distinct groups showed up at the spot, all anxious to see this intriguing discovery for themselves. They had no idea that they were going to witness the world's first image of a man frozen in time. The weather eventually cleared on September 22nd, giving professionals a window of opportunity to retrieve the body. This time, a bigger team arrived on the spot, prepared for the challenging circumstances with additional gear and a strong desire. The challenging mission of escaping Ötzi's ice tomb started. They worked with tremendous strength, unaffected by the bruises they sustained during the retrieval. The group of laborers gradually reduced the icy grip that had imprisoned him for thousands of years. They were finally able to free the body after several tense hours. The discovery's importance was not obvious right away. According to archaeologist Konrad Spindler, the style of an axe found with Ötzi indicates that he lived for at least 4,000 years. A significant amount of scientific research was conducted again to properly determine what happened to him. Researchers from several institutions meticulously examined tissue samples from his body and relevant documentation. The results were simply incredible. People were in full awe of what they found. Scientists employed advanced materials such as radiocarbon dating to ascertain Ötzi's age. Based on the findings, it was determined that Ötzi lived roughly 5,000 years ago, between 3,359 and 3105 BC. This was not merely an old mummy, rather, it gave an insight into a completely different period of human history. Scientists were able to further improve the time frame with the help of strong statistical techniques and more research. Based on their estimation, there was a 66% chance that Ötzi passed away between 3239 and 3105 BC. The probability of his demise fell at roughly 33% between 3359 and 3294 BC, and only 1% between 3277 and 3268 BC. These precise estimations painted Ötzi as a distinct individual living in a well-defined prehistoric era.
Here's where Ötzi was found. At first, because the family that found him thought that he was in Austria, they went down and called, in the next village down when they descended, they called the Austrian authorities to get the coroner in Innsbruck. So it was the Austrians that came up first. Technically, he was actually in Italy, and the Italians knew this, but Ötzi went to Austria for practically a decade. And eventually, GPS coordinates were shown that he was actually from Italy, and they repurposed the South Tyrol Archaeology Museum in Bolzano for him, and so that's where he resides today. So 10,500 feet. It kind of settled an international dispute. It could have gone to the Hague International Court if things had got out of hand. But the Austrians were very gracious about it, and now he's...
Ötzi's finding not only marked a scientific marvel, but also gave rise to a fascinating historical controversy. His finding high on the Thyssen Pass crossed the boundary between Austria and Italy. This boundary was established in 1919 by the Treaty of Saint-Germain-en-Laye, and it was defined by the watersheds of the Inn and Etsch rivers. But a glacial anomaly near Thyssen ruined the plan. Since the glacier melted away, it has covered the water's natural flow, making it challenging to pinpoint the exact watershed. As a result, the borderline appeared to be out of place and drawn a little too far north. Even though Ötzi's body was found in Italian territory, the meltwater from his discovery site eventually flowed into Austria. This minor mismatch led to some small conversation. Italy asserted that the discovery was its own, citing the 1919 agreement. October 1991 land measurements confirmed Italy's claim. Ötzi, the man frozen in time, lived just 92.56 meters inside Italian territory. This seemingly insignificant and pointless geographic information gave the intriguing Iceman story even more depth. The scientific frenzy led to conflict over the ownership of Ötzi the Iceman. South Tyrol, the region on the Italian side of the border where Ötzi was found, claimed credit for this incredible discovery. Enjoying the video so far? Well, why not hit that like button? It really helps us out. And while you're at it, why not subscribe? After taking into account the expertise of the University of Innsbruck, which had started the original investigation, an understanding was reached. South Tyrol helped Austrian scientists finish their important scientific analyses. This partnership laid the groundwork for our present understanding of Ötzi.
What they found. This is what Ötzi looks like today in the lab. Literally, he's frozen. He has to be kept, sub-frozen temperatures. He has to be in a frozen environment, aided with basically cryogenic lab environment, because we don't want him to decompose. That's really important. So he's kept very, very cold. And every 18 months or so, he's brought out, and a whole cadre of scientists descend on him.
The South Tyrol Museum of Archaeology in Bolzano, the region's city, has served as Ötzi's resting place since 1998. He's become an intriguing attraction there, drawing curious tourists from all around the world. The question of whose property it is might have arisen out of recognition, but Ötzi's story is now a global one that is making its way outside of Italy. Therefore, the scientists made an effort to learn as much as they could about him. Stay tuned to see what they found out. Scientists conducted a meticulous investigation that was unmatched in its analysis. It started with his body, which was turned into a blank canvas for various scientific methods. Every part of Ötzi's body was measured, x-rayed, and scrutinized under advanced microscopes. His last meal was revealed by the ice-preserved contents of his stomach. Thanks to radiocarbon dating, the scientists were able to pinpoint his exact age. The scientists started closely inspecting the clothing, tools, and other items they had discovered with him. Every one of them disclosed a little bit about his past, his upbringing, and perhaps even his birthplace. Not just his body, but also his possessions bore Ötzi's story. The extraordinary degree of preservation of Ötzi was one of the discovery's most astounding features. How could a body that was 5,300 years old have remained in that state? Since Ötzi spent thousands of years submerged in ice, his body functioned as a time capsule. providing scientists with a glimpse into the conditions that may have existed in the past. Scientists carried out a thorough investigation to get every detail out of the Iceman. When Ötzi passed away, his height was estimated to be about 160 centimeters. He weighed approximately 50 kilograms. A second test revealed that he passed away at the age of 45. It's interesting to note that the body weighed just 13.75 kilograms when it was originally recovered. This major difference illustrates how the atmosphere in which he was discovered dried him up. The ice was one reason why Ötzi's body was preserved and his decomposition was slowed down. The initial reports were influenced by the discovery's dramatic nature and incorrectly stated that his private parts and most of his scrotum were missing. Subsequent research revealed this to be untrue, though. The portion of the story serves to remind the general public of the value of scientific research and the necessity of correct information, especially when discussing a discovery of this magnitude. Ötzi's frozen corpse had a plethora of information. Scientists turned into forensic detectives, piecing together his life narrative down to the smallest details. Examining pollen, dust grains, and the isotopic makeup of Ötzi's dental enamel yielded unexpected revelations about his upbringing. According to microscopic evidence, Ötzi was reared in the Feldturns region, which is a South Tyrol settlement situated north of Bolzano. Isotopes, differentiations in an element's atomic size, serve as geographical markers. The isotopes found in Ötzi's teeth indicate that he had a unique upbringing that persisted even after years of migration. However, this story did not end there. According to analysis, Ötzi might have relocated at a later age. Based on the isotopic composition, he traveled to valleys around 50 kilometers further north. However, this was more than simply traveling to different locations. It was a man moving, purposefully navigating his surroundings. Was he looking for better land or running from an unknown threat? A technical finding in 2009 revealed more details on Ötzi's last hours. A non-invasive CAT scan discovered an unexpected feature. His stomach had moved higher. This was not an accidental displacement. His position at the time of his death was probably the cause. Additionally, the scan gave researchers a peek at what was in his stomach and revealed the last meal he had. A wild mountain goat's partially digested ibex flesh was found by DNA analysis, indicating that Ötzi may have enjoyed a high-protein meal shortly before he passed away. The discovery of wheat grains suggests a well-balanced diet high in carbohydrates. These seemingly insignificant details paint a vivid picture of Ötzi's last day, right down to his meal and choices. Scientists were able to learn more about the seasons and eating habits of Ötzi's period by examining his last meal. Careful examination of the contents of his stomach provided a more detailed picture, despite the initial investigation revealing ibex meat. Researchers believe that he may have eaten a few slices of dry, fatty flesh, possibly from a wild goat that is abundant in South Tyrol, Italy, as his final supper. This was a wise move because it gave him a concentrated supply of energy to get over the difficult mountain terrain. Another component of the revelation that chilled experts was the information about Ötzi's digestive system. The study revealed evidence of a second meal consumed around 8 hours prior to his passing. This earlier dinner was heavier, consisting of meat from chamois, another untamed mountain animal. Ötzi had also consumed bread flavored with herbs and meat from red deer. Ötzi's discovery of bread in his stomach suggested that he belonged to a society that was firmly established in agricultural activities, particularly grain farming, in addition to being a hunter-gatherer. To ensure Ötzi had a well-rounded diet, fruits and roots were added to the meals found in his digestive system. Einkorn wheat bran was one noteworthy item in his supper. A staple crop during the Chalcolithic era was the ancient wheat cultivar known as einkorn. The outermost layer of the wheat kernel, known as the bran, is high in minerals and fiber. The refined processing of einkorn may suggest the existence of bread-making techniques in Ötzi's day. These grains offered a transportable form of the carbs needed for long-term energy. Poppy seeds and flax offer possible nutritional or medicinal benefits. Seasonal additions to Ötzi's diet included sloes, tiny fruits resembling plums, and wild berries, which provide vital vitamins and taste. By examining Ötzi's last meal and potential supplies, scientists were able to learn about the sustenance techniques used by Europeans during the Copper Age. By making intelligent dietary choices, they were not just surviving, but also demonstrating a deep understanding of their surroundings and the available resources. You won't believe what scientists discovered when they chose to conduct additional research on specific body components like hair. Ötzi's hair served as a keratin time capsule, recording his dietary habits across time. Scientists examined Ötzi's previous meals from months before his death using hair analysis, a technique similar to reading growth rings in trees. Scientists conducted a short experiment in which they replicated Ötzi's travel habitats using pollen from his hair follicles. Pollen behaves like a time traveler, adjusting to the features of our hair as we cover large distances. Are you enjoying the video so far? Don't forget to hit the subscribe and like buttons to our channel for more incredible videos like this one. Your support means the world to us. An interesting finding emerged from the investigation. He had eaten his first meal, which came from a mid-altitude evergreen forest, approximately 8 hours before he died. This data indicated a varied dietary habit, as did the presence of pollen from wheat and legumes. It's possible that legumes, like lentils or peas, were heavily cultivated, suggesting that Ötzi resided in a society that had begun farming. The presence of hop hornbeam pollen was another intriguing finding. This pollen's outstanding state suggested that it was handled recently, possibly within 2 hours of Ötzi's passing. When combined with other foods' seasonal availability, this attribute turned out to be an essential factor. Speaking of Ötzi's hair, study of it showed his eating habits and possible workplace dangers. High quantities of arsenic and copper particles were discovered inside the threads. This, together with the extremely pure copper axe blade that was found with him, that's almost 99.7% copper, led to an intriguing theory. It's possible that Ötzi participated in the smelting of copper. Workers are often exposed to these elements during the process of smelting, which is used to recover metal from ore. These elements implied a life spent around copper mines or in the laborious process of turning ore into metal for sale. An interesting detail was found when Ötzi's bone structure was examined in detail. His tibia, femur, and pelvic proportions suggested a life spent trekking challenging terrain in addition to his likely occupation. These particular bones, which are essential for walking and supporting body weight, displayed evidence of adaptation to severe pressure from steep terrain. The majority of Europeans throughout the Copper Age were reportedly less mobile and focused mostly on farming or small-scale hunting, which is why their musculature was not as developed. Ötzi appeared to have lived a more nomadic existence based on his physical characteristics.
He had lower back problems. The same is true for the knee. We know he had some arthrosis of the knee joints, and this caused pain from time to time. Physical appearance, that he was walking a lot, that he maybe was carrying some heavy things, so maybe.
The assumption that Ötzi was a high-altitude shepherd was based on his discovery in the Alps, which may have indicated that his occupation involved constant movement. Evidence suggested that Ötzi had the strength and ability to cross tough terrain necessary to herd animals in such a difficult environment. These findings are still open to revision as researchers do additional research to get a more accurate picture. The story of Ötzi was made possible by modern technologies. Experts created a facial reconstruction for the South Tyrol Museum of Archaeology in Bolzano, Italy, using cutting-edge 3D scanning technology. This recreation gave us a startling impression of a man who was perhaps 45 years of age or more. His face was weathered from living outside all his life, and his deep-set brown eyes stared out. His beard surrounded his anxious brow, and his sunken cheeks suggested that he might be having problems, that he might have recently become ill, or that his surroundings were unpleasant. Overall, one got the sense that this was a man who had experienced hardship. It was a sobering but poignant reminder of life in the Copper Age. Once a frozen, unknown figure, Ötzi gradually began to tell his story as a talented worker and a man of the mountains.
practiced throughout a huge portion of human history, going back at least 16 or 18,000 years before present.
More than merely symbols, Ötzi's tattoos were a form of expression etched all over his body in ink. When 61 tattoos, a distinct and quiet language etched into his skin, were discovered, an intriguing tale emerged. Imagine his torso covered with bold, thin black lines that vary in width from 1 to 3 millimeters to 7 to 40 millimeters. Some lines guarded his lumbar spine, while others went parallel to the longitudinal axis of his torso.
He had, we know now, 62 tattoos on his body, and they're not clan markings. What's interesting about all these tattoos, they were over joints. There's only one tattoo that's not over a joint. Even the most recent one found was over a broken rib, and that tells you something. Why over joints? This is a bit hypothetical, but we know from a lot of modern medicine that carbon dioxide is one of the painkillers, and it's possible that the tattoos, they were not done at the same time. The tattoos in his body were done over a period of years. Every one was over a joint and over a rib, except for one. And look at the back vertebrae here with tattoos along them, and the elbow also had a tattoo, his ankles, his shoulders. All these tattoos, if you take crushed carbon, charcoal, and you cut and then insert it in there, it could be potentially effective for some time if there's a reaction with the carbon, oxidation with the carbon, produce carbon dioxide.
There was a specific cruciform imprint or picture of a cross on his right lower leg and behind his right knee. It was the same on his left wrist, which was covered in a ring of matching lines. But it was his legs that really made this creative expression of work. His legs were covered in 12 different sets of lines. Miniature tests provided information about how these persistent stains originate. Researchers found that the pigment used was not an exotic substance, but rather fireplace ash or soot. This readily available material was delicately scraped into Ötzi's tiny skin penetrations and openings. A lovely story began to form. Some areas had multiple tattoo layers, which showed that the design had been expanded or revised over time. Ötzi placed attention on these markings, as evidenced by the hazier and more submerged appearance of certain locations, which suggested repeated applications. Curiosity was sparked by these tattoos. Were they merely ornamental, a kind of body art common in his community? Did they imply anything more profound, like pain relief or acupuncture, which are known to exist in some cultures? Maybe they served as a badge of honor, a testament to his achievements or social standing. Numerous questions remain unanswered regarding Ötzi, but one thing is certain: these tattoos offered a window into the Middle Ages, revealing much about his life and experiences. It was thought that the tattoos on Ötzi's mummy were the oldest ever found on a human. If this story was accurate, it would enrich his intriguing life story. The discovery of tattoos on Egyptian corpses in 2018 caused a stir in the archaeological community because it put the corpses in a comparable chronological period to Ötzi. The Iceman's body art was important even after his claim to be the oldest tattooed mummy faded. The tale of Ötzi's tattoos reveals more about their actual exposure than just his age or life stage. Many of these multi-sided inscriptions were initially invisible to the naked eye, as they were concealed by the passage of time and severe weather. In 2015, all of this was altered by the inventiveness of experts. They made use of a wonderful tool, multispectral imaging without pain. They were able to take pictures outside of the visible light range by employing a technique that was equal to apply multiple shaded channels to a camera focal point. The hidden language carved on Ötzi's skin was revealed by researchers through the use of several wavelengths that are undetectable to the human eye. These previously undiscovered tattoos offered fresh insight on the Iceman's life, periods, cultural customs, and even behaviors. In the age of technology, things never stop changing. The value of Ötzi's body handiwork was not diminished by the discovery of ancient tattooed mummies in Egypt. Instead, it expanded the discussion on the range of sensations that can be had and the depth and breadth of inking as a human activity. Ötzi's tattoos serve as an important link to a bygone age and reflect the human yearning for self-expression and meaningful transformation that never goes away. His testimony created a more vivid picture of a shared conduct that cut across time and space, as did the discoveries from Egyptian mummies. From the cold hold of the Alps to the sun-baked sands of Egypt, these ancient people's indelible prints spoke volumes about a universal human experience, a desire to leave a lasting mark and a connection to a practice that we can still feel today. In 2012, the complete genome of Ötzi was sequenced for the first time, and a new high-coverage genome with far less modern human contamination was made public in 2023. The development of sequencing technologies made it possible for us to produce an Iceman genome with high coverage. Therefore, we were able to get more precise results. Ötzi's DNA revealed an exciting surprise to scientists. His mitochondrial DNA was examined, and it came from his mother's side of the family. Surprisingly, research revealed that Ötzi's mtDNA belonged to a family tree that had never been found in Europe previously. Because it was so uncommon, it resembled a unique branch on the human family tree. But the story didn't end there. His complete DNA, which incorporates genes from both parents, demonstrated a greater affinity with people from southern Europe. It's noteworthy that isolated populations, such as the Sardinians and Corsicans, showed a larger correlation with this relationship. This suggests that Ötzi's ancestors were part of a great migration that swept throughout Europe thousands of years ago. These early European farmers imported their DNA and way of life from Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, where they had driven out the earlier hunter-gatherers. As a result, Ötzi's DNA was distinct and offered information about a major demographic shift that affected contemporary Europe. The 2023 inquiry revealed several surprising details about Ötzi's ancestry. He had over 90% more of his gene pool from early Anatolian farmers than any other European of his day. This suggests that his ancestors were a part of the widespread farming migration that drove the European hunter-gatherer population from Europe. Also, the lack of steppe people's genes, which may have been polluted by DNA from modern humans, defied earlier research findings. Are these results merely preliminary, or did they represent the whole picture of what has been found about Ötzi the Iceman? As we wait for additional research, it's critical to highlight the role that science and technology have played in key discoveries, such as the one we've just covered. Technological developments have illuminated detailed intricacies surrounding the intriguing findings, facilitating the efficient work of scientists and researchers. The world is full of mysteries and wonders, but more than that, it's full of people who are constantly searching for new wonders to discover. What will be the next big discovery about Ötzi? Share your speculations in the comments section. If you enjoyed learning about Ötzi's life secrets and would like to see more amazing historical discoveries, remember to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Come along on this historical adventure with us. There's always more to discover.